So good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. This is Audrey Russo, President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Technology Council. Welcome to Business as Usual. We have a great guest wrapping up this week. Lots to talk about, lots to pack in, and an amazing ambassador for Pittsburgh. So before I do that, I want to thank Jonathan Kirsting. He's joining us today. He's Vice President of all things media and marketing for the Tech Council. And I also want to give a huge shout out to Huntington Bank. Huntington Bank has been our partner right from the onset. They've just been tremendous through the entire pandemic and beyond. They've also been with us as we've run a lot of experiments, and business as usual being one of them. So we're pretty excited about today. This is wrapping up 136 conversations that we've had since the onset of COVID. And our job is just to make sure that we are keeping the community connected. We're keeping them informed. We're trying to showcase. We're trying to bring some positivity, but we're also trying to make sure that we are connected to all the things that are happening in our community, both tech focused as well as all the amenities. And today is just another example of that. We've muted your microphones, so we've done that on purpose, and then we have a chat session. So we'll have an opportunity to have a conversation. I do want to tell everyone that next week we have another great week. We're kicking off the week with Mark DeSantis, who's the CEO at Bloomfield Robotics. We also have Richard Skorpensky. He's the project lead at the circular economy, which many people are very, very passionate about at Covestro. We have Ben Wilson at Rivers Agile. He's going to be talking about his incubator and some of the work they do. And then and Thursday, we have Finch Fulton, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Transportation and Policy at the U.S. Department of Transportation. So we've got that in the hopper, and we've got more. So I'm going to jump in. I'm very thrilled to have August Carlino, who goes as Augie, which I love. And he's president and CEO of Rivers of Steel. And this is an organization that everyone needs to know about. Some of you may know about it, but we're going to do a dive into really talking about what he's up to and what's in store for the future. So Augie, before we start, it's great to see you. Let's talk a little bit about yourself, Augie the man. Share your journey about how you got to Rivers of Steel and the role that you serve in our community.
Well, Audrey, thank you for having me. It's good to see you all too, and I hope everyone's staying well. That's a scary story only because I could talk forever about it, but I've been now with Rivers of Steel for 30 years. I came off of Capitol Hill working for a former congressman from Pittsburgh, Bill Coyne. And then, like a lot of people do on the Hill, they end up downtown DC lobbying, and I did that for a while. And it was my wife, a New York City native who never lived in Pittsburgh, that said to me she wanted to move to Pittsburgh to raise kids because she thought it was a better environment for them to grow up in than the DC area. And so we did that. And I came back to a job that at that time, Senator Hines was spearheading to try and save a part of an old steel mill to turn it into a National Park Service site. They needed some help figuring out the ins and outs of legislative work on the Hill, both in DC and in Harrisburg. I fit that bill. Frankly, I thought, I'd be there for a couple of years and move on. But I've been having way too much fun, I have to tell you. Now that project, and when I say a little project, it's not little in scope at all, but little in size. That's the Cary furnaces in Swissville and Rankin. We cover 8 counties now. We've done about 500 projects in those communities, brought in several $100 million in money to help redevelop, rebuild many things that you all have been on, like riverfront trails, riverfront development, brownfield revitalization, historic restoration, Main Street communities, all toward an eye of these old industrial communities, because frankly, that old industry was the foundation of what we know and are experiencing as Pittsburgh today. Technology that we are all talking about and you all showcase You know, Pittsburgh was the Silicon Valley 100 years ago for industrial technology. And it's amazing the resilience of this city in being able to transform itself to new industries in order to meet demand of global economy. And that's what we talk about at Rivers of Steel.
Well, what's the mission? Tell it, what is the mission of Rivers of Steel?
You know, you're going to embarrass me in front of some of my staff who I know are in this audience, that I can't repeat to you the exact mission statement.
It doesn't have to be exact, but
okay, but I'm going to tell you what it is in theory. Our job is to focus on old industrial communities, as it said, and make sure that that culture, that history survives as this region transitions. It's not to stand in the way of progress and redevelopment, but to work with it in a way that that heritage and history is not whitewashed from the landscape. This is not a novel concept for Southwest Pennsylvania. This is actually a federal program created by Congress, National Heritage Areas. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has a similar program called State Heritage Areas. And what we become are conduits of money from the state and federal government to help communities in that transition mode and using their history so that there is an understanding and a semblance of place and people and culture that allows a community's economy to regrow, but still with a nod to you know, the people that founded these communities in this region. You know, we can all go to places where I call like the mayonnaise mile of America. You get dropped down in the middle of a place and you have no idea where you're at because everything looks the same, right? But as we redevelop brownfields, you see a lot of the recognition of the old Pittsburgh in these new redevelopments. And that's what we're after, not just on those old industrial mill sites, but putting that into communities, teaching it in schools, always with a reflection of who we are as people and what this region did and does today. That's our mission.
Wow, that's pretty bold and wide. So what about the evolution? Talk about the evolution. You've been there for 30 years. You've built the organization, has wide touch points. But what about this evolution of it? I mean, because you're doing very different things today than you were doing back then.
Yeah, our first primary role as a nonprofit is that I never wanted the organization to act like a nonprofit. If we were going to partner with businesses on redevelopment of old brownfield sites, with economic development agencies in the counties in Southwest Pennsylvania, that the mission of the organization and our evolution always had to be thinking and working like a for-profit business. That means we needed to be entrepreneurial, we needed to be opportunistic, we needed to be able to figure out what do we bring to the table for those partners that they may not have access to that we can get because of what we were designated as a federal and a state heritage area. And we started that way, small. Like I said, small not in size, but definitely small in scope at Carey Furnaces and Homestead. And then we saw opportunities in other industrial communities because similar to Homestead, you know, places like Clairton and Brownsville and Katanning and Beaver, they all had similar needs and similar problems. So we began to work with them, finding ways to help them get money, making connections with them with foundations, and really building their capacity as stewards of their community. One of the things that this region had as an old industrial community is this paternalistic approach that we were all dependent upon the big company for our tax base and for where our communities went. Well, when those mills and mines closed in the 70s and 80s, that whole network of structure disappeared with it, and these communities were left spinning. So we tried to build that capacity back into those communities. That's been an evolutionary process and something that we still do a lot with in those communities. But we're now seeing local organizations coming into play where we act as a partner. We don't have to be carrying the load of their development programming or their projects for them the way we were 25 years ago. So, you know, I'm not, this is not me saying it, but this organization, Rivers of Steel, our partnership with all of you it's been held up and showcased as a model for how other regions in the country can work. And I'm proud of that. We got a great staff. I can't do it all myself, you know. Just let them go and they do things.
You should be proud. There's a quick question, Jonathan, if you just want to ask that, because I think it's a good question.
All about partnerships. Yeah. So who are you currently partnering with right now, Augie?
Oh boy. One of the biggest partners we have is Allegheny County Department of Development on the whole redevelopment of the Cary Furnace site. Our permanent partners, because of our designation, is the National Park Service at the federal level, and at the state level, the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Those are the places that we get the majority of our funding annually from in order to run the Heritage Area program. And then from that, we are looking to partners in other communities. So they're county economic development agencies, big and small historical societies. We do a lot with schools and school programming on Explorer, the STEM education boat that sits down behind the Carnegie Science Center sub. And we partner with the Carnegie Science Center and the Carnegie Museums as well. We've got dozens and dozens of partners, too numerous to go through that whole list right now. But again, that opportunistic approach, we're looking for anything and anyone we can work with.
So what about like this riverboat, the Explorer riverboat? How did that become integrated into what you do?
Well, one of the things we were looking at early on is in our planning and our goals for development of the heritage area is that as steel mills and mines closed, there were opportunities for access to the river that the communities never had at their disposal. And the strategy of ours was literally change the focus of riverfront development so that the riverfronts didn't, which were always then at one time the backyard of industry, we wanted to make riverfronts the front door to a community. That literally was a goal of ours spelled out in a plan. And one of the things we began to do is not just work on riverfront revitalization, like with the Port of Pittsburgh and that whole North Shore riverfront that's over there in the city of Pittsburgh, but also work with organizations who were trying to get access to the river with their program. And at that time in the 90s, it was an organization called RiverQuest. So we helped them not just get money to help build their dock for that boat, but we were working with them on education programming to teach the history of technology from the standpoint of the steel industry, because what they were teaching was an environmental evolution of the rivers. And we saw the need to help kids understand why the rivers are what they are today compared to what they were 100 years ago, polluted and place you wouldn't want to go near. So that created that partnership and that relationship early on. And then as organizations do, they grow, they drift apart a little bit. And I apologize about the pun. I read one day that they were on the verge of going out of business because of financial problems. And like, anyone that works with a partner, you're concerned about them. We had obviously money invested in them, as I said. So a simple phone call one day in April of 2014 turned out to be 2 years later, a merger acquisition that we orchestrated with them, friendly merger acquisition in order to keep this world-class STEM program going. But what we're doing now, in addition to the school kids on the boat, is doing Pittsburgh, what we call Pittsburgh 101 tours that talks about the evolution of Pittsburgh as a technological industrial city. And the boat's available for charters by private organizations or individuals if they want to use it.
So much of what you do, it just spans a lot, and it includes a focus on the arts. And there are some things that you've been doing recently that have really cultivated that. You remember we went to Bilbao along with other leaders in the arts and nonprofit community a couple of years ago, just to look at what was going on in Bilbao and, what it meant for economic development. Talk about the arts. How does that's been woven into your work? And if people don't know about Rivers of Steel, I'm going to ask Lexi to put the link up so that they can go to your link.
You got it there. Absolutely.
Yeah. So cultural arts was a bedrock of what we looked at. And when I say cultural arts, I'm talking about traditional art programming or art practices, I should say, that survive our ancestors, right? And we know a lot of those things. We see a lot of that around our region right now. You know, one of the easy things to point out that ties in a way to what we're asking, Audrey, you know, is iconography in churches, right? If we're talking about murals on walls and iconography, we think about some of these churches that we have. Well, you know, this is all a reflection of our immigrant heritage. That has manifested to different ways of expression of 21st century community. And one of the things you see on old industrial sites that have been abandoned is graffiti. And, you know, I personally think, well, graffiti, I understand, is a nuisance and many times illegal. I'm looking at the art of the graffiti. And a lot of times the art in the graffiti is absolutely stunning.
Absolutely.
And so it became a challenge to us years ago to try to figure out a way at Carey Furnaces to use that art that was being trespassed on and tagged in ways to make the site attractive to a different audience that just would come there for an historic tour. Coincidentally, before we got access to Carey Furnaces, there was a group of sculpture artists that illegally had accessed the site and constructed out of scrap metal and tubing that they took from the site. They constructed a big deer head. And the deer head at Carey Furnaces, yeah, I see Jonathan motioning. The deer head at Carey Furnaces is a reflection of the metamorphosis that of an old industrial site goes through when it sits abandoned. If anything is doing anything to transform the site, it's Mother Nature taking over the site in flora and fauna. And deer were beginning to populate a site where for 100 years nothing lived except for the workers that came in and out of that site. So that was their testament to this evolutionary change that was happening at Pittsburgh. We took the two of those, merged them together, and began to work on arts and Carey Furnaces as an incubator for craft art. Because you think about what the men and women did there, they were iron pourers, they were steel pourers, and in a way, they were metal artists in the way that we know about metal artists that work today, right? In the blacksmith shops or in all these shops that you see in Lawrenceville and the South Side. So we're using that as an incubation spot in order to build out what we call the Mon Valley Creative Corridor. And that is a nod, again, to a river valley that was the most industrious, hardest working river valley in the history of the world. And now where we can work with craft artisans that use metal and glass and pottery, we're looking to incubate them out of Carey Furnaces, put them into these older communities that we work in so that they can take over abandoned storefronts on Main Street and help work with those communities and those county economic development organizations to transform those communities where people then go shop and then hopefully go to work, establish businesses, maybe go back to live someday. It's a big strategy. It's going to take a lot of time to play out, but we're seeing the benefits of that early on in this project.
Well, there's a couple of questions I think they meld, Jonathan. It's we can just get to those too, and I want to talk about the pandemic.
Absolutely. And before I ask the question, I just got to say, I've encountered some foxes down along the Carey Furnace site in my days riding my bike there. So it's amazing what's going on. So basically the whole idea here is, obviously, are you working with other cities that have waterfronts like ours? And are you still working internationally with cities like Bilbao at all?
Other cities in the region, yeah, we're working through 8 counties, Allegheny, Armstrong, Beaver, Butler, Washington, Westmoreland, Fayette, and Greene. So it's that whole Three Rivers network of the water and its major tributaries. we're working in Rice's Landing. I mentioned before, Katanning, we've had involvement with the near riverfront revitalization. We worked with the Port of Pittsburgh on the whole North Shore revitalization project. We worked with Damian Sofer on the South Side development. We worked with, in Homestead, Continental on the revitalization of the waterfront. You know, again, the idea is not to stand in the way of development that happens there. We want to see that development come in, but we encourage developers to use elements that are a reflection of that industrial history, so that there is an understanding of this place being what it was and what it is today. And it's worked out well, yeah.
Are there similar cities that have a Rivers of Steel, like organizations, like in Cleveland or Detroit?
Well, it's interesting you say that. One of the other heritage areas is in based out of Akron, Ohio and Erie Canal Corridor, and they are working on a revitalization plan of the entire canal system that connected Cleveland down to Ashtabula, Ohio. And one of their major focuses, funded by the Knight Foundation, is the whole transformation of downtown Akron with this historic canal trailway, literally a waterway and a walking trail as the spine that is the anchor for revitalization of downtown Akron. Another one is Yuma, Arizona, on the Colorado River, and a whole project there on cleaning up the riverfront through Yuma and getting rid of invasive species and making the river not only visually more appealing, but more appealing to developers that might want to locate nearby the river. So yeah, there's a couple other projects that are out there like that.
So let's talk about the pandemic, because you've done some really, you know, amazing things. We can talk about the Carpool Theater. I mean, you've had to do some pivots. So what have you been doing? I mean, I think you're doing something, you know, like us. We're wrestling with every single pivot every day, every week. And
it brings a new one, doesn't it?
Right? So tell us what you've done.
So Carry Furnaces normally would be open for regular tours. Plus, on top of that, people rent it for use for big festivals. Movie companies that come into Pittsburgh often would rent it from us for settings in the movies. You know, in mid-March, that all shut down. And that's bread and butter for our revenue stream as an organization, in addition to the grant monies and the federal and state money we get. So we began to think about how do we work at Carry Furnaces in a way that could get people there. And we were really hamstrung until the economy was allowed to open back up again. So we began with smaller group tours, socially distancing them, and taking them to limited places there. But really what the pandemic provided for was these other ideas that we had that we just didn't ever have time to implement. One of them being the drive-ins at Carry Furnaces. You know, we had so much activity at Carry Furnaces prior to the pandemic that we could never do this drive-in movie concept that we had thought about trying to do. So we did it. You know, we built a screen on the side of one of the buildings. The courtyard, or the western field, as we call it, that stretches into Swissvale, we use as the parking area for the cars. And, you know, we started with what we would thought was going to be 6 showings, 1 a month, and that would be it. Well, those showings sold out before we even announced the movies that were going to be each month on those drive-ins. There's one coming up, I think, either this weekend or next weekend. Forgive me for not knowing, but it doesn't matter anyway. That's sold out, as is the last one in November.
Have you seen movies?
Well, we started with movies that were Pittsburgh-based movies. You know, all of our favorite one being Flashdance, right? That Academy Award-winning movie. Sorry, I saw it again that night, and I thought, oh my Lord, you know, that was what Pittsburgh was famous for. You know, I'm going to throw you guys a curve because we're going to be showing pretty soon The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh. And anyone that knows, okay, Jonathan knows that one. That's going to be one of the movies we show. But this coming week, because it's the Halloween season, it's a horror classic. So we've got The Exorcist, and I think the second movie is The Omen. You know, some of those that you might be afraid to walk into a dark room after seeing. You know, we showed my favorite movie of all time last month, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You know, you know, and people like it. They want to get out. They want to do things. We create an environment where they can sit outside their car and still be social distanced. We run tours before the movies so that they could see it. The idea behind all this is not just movies, which people are interested in, but some people that are interested in drive-in or just going to a movie may not ever think or know about Carey Furnaces and what it offers, not just by way of history, but all these other programming we're doing. So it's expanding our audience to different people in ways that we may not have ever been able to reach these folks if the pandemic hadn't happened. And they're wildly successful.
Cars, how many can you accommodate?
250 people within the state's limit, right? So that's not 250 cars, that's 250 people. So we're advanced selling tickets. And once we hit that limit, we shut down the ticket sales, and it's been going fine.
Are you selling food? Are people allowed to bring alcohol?
Food trucks that, yeah, there are food trucks that come in, ones that know us and that we've partnered with. You're allowed to bring your food, you know, if you want to bring a cooler. And again, the food trucks have been happy. It gives them a venue in the pandemic, right?
So any other new experiments that you want to talk about?
Well, we just closed down last night the final showing of a project we called Light Play at Carey Furnaces. This was an exhibition of 11 artists. Their medium was light. If you go to our website or do a Google search on the news, you'll see some images of that. Absolutely spectacular transformation of the Carey Furnaces and internal workings of the Carey Furnaces. I had somebody email me after they visited a week or so ago that described one of the buildings that they had walked into, one of the rooms, where it was meant to feel like the building was breathing, the way the light worked, that said she actually felt like the building was like lungs expanding and contracting. You know, we've got an amazing, go back to what you asked, Audrey, when you said this, our experience in Bilbao. We have an amazing population of artists in this region that are looking for ways to showcase themselves. We're providing a forum and a setting for them. Other people are doing that. You know, if you look at all of what Pittsburgh had been thought about, no one would have ever thought this graphic illustration art that we're seeing all throughout the community and the region. And it's great to be a part of that.
Well, you know, today is National Manufacturing Day, and I have to give credit to Brian Kennedy, who serves as executive producer of the show, as well as overseeing ops, for having you on, because the legacy of manufacturing and the craftsmanship and the honor that you've done by looking backwards as well as looking forwards is really quite remarkable. So, you know, your work in terms of blending cultural amenities, physical properties, as well as interesting ways to stay connected is part of some of the sweetest pieces of Pittsburgh. So I can't thank you enough.
You know, we see it as adding an asset to what otherwise might be looked at as a negative and a draw, right? If you only see these old mill towns, and if you only see an old brownfield site as dilapidated and degraded, how are you all and others in the economic development industry ever going to convince people to move here, relocate a business, set up shop, right? What we're trying to do is, you know, literally polish off the rust without getting rid of the rust, and helping people realize that this is a thing that once it's lost can never ever be rebuilt, right? And again, I will never say we can save everything that's out there, but saving those things that are important, that are iconic structures, that are resemblance of who we are as people of Pittsburgh and Southwestern Pennsylvania. If you take that out of us, you've literally torn away our spirit and our soul. And I don't think anybody wants that to happen to Pittsburgh.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you for your leadership, for your continued vision, for your ability to see all the intersections of all that everyone does here, and for, you know, being such a good collaborator. You're a true asset to our region. So I want to thank you for joining us. You should go out to Rivers of Steel. Obviously, now we have to get on the market to figure out how to get tickets to your shows because they're all sold out. But hopefully you'll do more. Hopefully you'll do this as long as you can through the winter, and continue to do your great work. We're big fans, Augie. Thank you for the time. And
you're welcome. Let me just say something. Okay. I'll make an offer to you. Any of your membership online today or after, if they want to come out to us, email Audrey and Brian and Jonathan. You let us know. We'll get you into the site. Okay, we'll do special tours for you guys. All right.
I want to go.
Thank you, Augie. Thank you for your leadership of Rivers of Steel. And everyone have a great, safe weekend. We got a great lineup for next week as well. So stay safe. And I'm signing off.
Thank you.